Just let me know.
Welcome to Hey Coach Tony, the top broadcast in youth sports, where you get to call in and give your opinion. Call 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. Give your opinion. And now here's your host, Tony Fiorino.
Yeah, wait a second. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Hey Coach Tony. I'm your host, Tony Fiorino, and as you know, every Saturday, 9 a.m., we hit you with the hottest topics in youth sports, and we always want to hear what you guys have to say, so we've opened up the studio lines at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. This week, I was all set to talk about how judgment-based sports get under my skin, and we're going to try to get to that before the show is over, because with the Olympics coming up, things like gymnastics and figure skating and all those things where someone else decides whether or not your kid wins or loses, it's gotten under my skin forever, and I really do want to try to talk about it. But quite frankly, I would be quite remiss not to put my final nail in the coffin of the Penn State scandal. You know, I used to call it the Jerry Sandusky scandal, but after this week, this thing took on a whole new life. If you've been living in a cave, according to a former FBI director named Louis Freeh, Hall of Fame coach Joe Paterno, as well as other senior Penn State officials, concealed critical facts about Jerry Sandusky's child abuse. I don't know why they keep calling it child abuse. It was rape. Let's call it what it was. But they concealed these critical facts about Sandusky because they were worried about bad publicity. It was a 267-page report. It was released Thursday after an 8-month inquiry by Freeh, who, by the way, was hired by Penn State and the trustees just weeks after Sandusky was arrested back in November to look into what has become clearly one of sports' most horrendous and most horrifying scandals. All right, listen, I'm obviously not going to read a 267-page report on the air. God knows my show is boring enough as it is. But there are some serious discussion points that have come up this week, and they are worth mentioning. And, of course, I'm hoping you guys have something to add to this. So if you got something to say about the whole Penn State situation, just give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. While we're waiting for your calls, I want to highlight what I believe are the three, well, there are plenty. But let's talk about what the most important questions are, at least in my mind. And let's hope you guys feel the same way. The first question I got for you. With all this new information, what should be done to the Penn State football program, if anything? Is there culpability within the football program itself? Some people are calling for the death penalty. Some people say this has nothing to do with the football program, but more to do with the people involved in the football program. Next question, and this one is a little bit more subjective. What is Joe Paterno going to be remembered for? Simple enough question. And the last one, and I shouldn't say the last one because there are going to be others, but the last one that jumped off the page at me as I was writing my notes last night is, what should happen to the statue of Joe Paterno that is currently standing on the campus of Penn State? So those are the big three questions I want to hit. If you've got others of your own, by all means, give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. That's 855-439-2622. We're going to get your calls in just a second, but by the way, I want to welcome back our esteemed intern, Josh. I got to tell you, this kid's got the life. You get home from a year worth of keg parties. You stop in for a week or two to do a couple of shows. Then you're on 3 weeks vacation. Are you okay? Are you all recovered, Josh? You ready to go?
Yeah, you're the best boss. Thanks for those 3 weeks off.
The best boss. All right. Great. What do you think about this, Josh? I mean, you told me some stories during the week that I think right after the Penn State scandal, the football team traveled to Indiana to play you guys, and then I think right after Paterno died, the basketball team came to play you guys. You are like Joe Paterno's black cat. But what do you think about in general terms what happened this week with the report?
Yeah, I mean, what's even crazier than that is I almost ended up there. But I mean, it's the whole thing that's happened is just, it's really an atrocity. It's really bad for the school, for the publicity. And it's amazing how, this figurehead of Joe Paterno in the world of college football or in the world of sports in general has, really fallen.
Fallen isn't the word.
Crashed and burned.
Crashed and burned, and and there are so many points that I'm going to want to hit today, including the level of culpability for Joe Paterno himself and his family. But as I promised, we're going to start getting to some of these calls here. 855, hey coach, is the studio line. In fact, I believe on line 3 we've got Charlie calling in from Jersey City, New Jersey. Hey Charlie, good morning. You're on Hey Coach Tony. How we doing?
Hey, Coach, how's it going?
It's going great, Charlie. I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the whole situation that was going on with the Paterno thing, I think it's more indicative of the problem with the NCAA as a whole. The thing is, you have to look at is that, even with a man like Paterno, who had a singularity of vision like he had, he wasn't resistant to the pressures of winning out there, like any other coach. He had to get to where he was. He had to be the best that he had to be, regardless of the people around him. And I think that's the overall problem. See, the thing is that, if you've got to win it all, and, some of the people who are going to be surrounding him and who may keep you from reaching that vision are going to get kicked by the wayside. And that's the whole problem. Let's face it, that the NCAA is a farming system for the NFL.
Yep.
Okay, just be honest about it.
Yep.
So, there's just too much money into the system as it is. The whole system has to be just redone from the top of its head down to its feet. It's just got to be done over,
Well,
so, when you have something.
Here's the thing, Charlie. You say, the people around him could get kicked by the wayside. Don't you think it was the complete opposite in this case, where Sandusky, who clearly should have been kicked to the curb, by the way, bounce off the curb and land in prison for the rest of his life, which is what's going to happen anyway. I think the issue here is this had nothing to do with NCAA sanctions or violations. This was about human morality. And
exactly. But morality doesn't play any part in making money. Sandusky was untouchable because he helped that program win. If you got a guy who's going to keep letting you win and, getting you to where you want to be and being like the top of the country or get you ranked, of course he should have gone to jail. Absolutely.
Yeah, but he wasn't untouchable, Charlie.
Too much money involved.
Charlie, he wasn't untouchable. Paterno, in hindsight, and I'm going to speak today from hindsight because that's all we got. Paterno, when this first came out in '98, could have simply said, let's dig in, and based on what we find, we're going to fire Sandusky. If in 1998 Jerry Sandusky was fired, do you think it would have had any impact whatsoever on Penn State's football program?
You know what? I would think in hindsight it probably would not have, because they do have a large group of talented people at that institution. But that's you still have to, there's still a level of regrouping and working with other people. And I guess Paterno, for whatever reasons he's had, decided to, stay with his inner circle and not report him. But, I think that if there was a situation where, there was this pressure to win was not there and not to, get to where the program is beyond or where it is. I think it would have been easier for Sandusky to be exercised from that system than what was done prior to that.
Exercise is a great word because I got to tell you, Charlie, outside the four walls of Penn State, nobody really knew or cared who Jerry Sandusky was. If they fired him, they would have had a line of 35 to 55 guys waiting to take that job. But let me ask you the real question, Charlie. What do you think about the statue at Penn State of Joe Paterno? What should they do with it? Should they do a Saddam Hussein on it? Should it stay there? What do you think?
No, I obviously, I think that the statue should stay. I don't think that it was it doesn't, Paterno, whether you like what he did or not, the guy was a winner, and he did what he was put there to do. I wouldn't remove, because you can't really change anything. The guy was there, and I think it's not a problem with Joe Paterno. Like I said, I think it's a problem with the system.
All right, Charlie.
So, I don't think moving the Paterno would really change anything.
All right, so Hank, let me ask you this then. The first football game that is televised from Penn State, whether or not they do that this year, there's still issues that are going to be resolved. But let's assume first game at Penn State is televised. You know that they're going to show that statue on camera. You see that statue, Charlie, what's the first thing that's going to come into your head?
Yeah.
All right, so you answered my question for me, correct?
It's going to be that way for a while.
No, it's not, Charlie. It's going to be that way forever.
I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be a situation. I think it's going to be an asterisk on his legacy, but I don't think it's going to be a situation where it's going to be that level of horror that's emanating from the public right now as it is, like let's say 10 or 15 years from now.
Charlie, that's going to be the eternal brown stain on the Penn State underwear. How's that for a visual for you? Charlie, hey, some excellent points on that, and I appreciate the call. Guys, I don't know what you think about what Charlie had to say there. Some of it is actually pretty insightful, pretty profound as far as reading between the lines. But, what do you guys make of some of Charlie's opinions there? What do you think, Josh?
Penn State could go ahead and do the classic, get rid of anything that has to do with the head coach who was involved in a scandal, like some schools do. Like in Indiana, Bobby Knight had the incident with choking the basketball player student.
All right, wait. Before you give Indiana, before you give Indiana references, Josh, don't ever say the incident because Paterno may have just overtaken Bobby Knight as my most despised college coach in history. There were many incidents, but like I said, this is. You can't compare this to an incident because you know what? There is culpability. And by the way, I'm tired of hearing people say that Paterno is just as guilty as Sandusky. Let me be the first to say it. No, he's not.
No,
Sandusky,
not at all.
Sandusky raped little boys. Joe Paterno let it happen. Now, it doesn't mean that Joe Paterno is without fault. He has got plenty of blame. And the lives of many young children were forever scarred because of his, not his inability, because he had plenty of ability, because of his lack of desire to act. And that's what this really comes down to. No question about it. By the way, while we were on the phone with Charlie, we got a note coming in here from Kirk in Chicago, whose reaction to Charlie's call was, and I quote, "What?" People make choices. This is a problem with those individuals and the university covering it up, not with the NCAA. The pressure to win comes from individuals on the inside. Greed, same things. They did not need Sandusky to win. Kirk, great point. They did not need Sandusky. This was not about a Penn State mentality. This was not about an NCAA win-at-all-costs culture and chemistry. This was about a culture of evasion and divisiveness and fraud. Let's call it what it was. And again, I have friends who went to Penn State, who go to Penn State. Jimmy Kennedy from the New York Giants played for Joe Paterno. I've asked Jimmy numerous times for his opinion on what happened here. And Jimmy, like most, except for idiots like Franco Harris, like most Penn State alumni, Jimmy Kennedy, and for all the right reasons, loved this man forever. And they're just basically running for the hills. They don't want to make comments about this because it's so obvious. Who does want to make comments? Guess who does want to make comments? Guess who can't keep his mouth shut?
Jay Paterno.
Jay Paterno, exactly. This idiot, my God, you're disgracing your family worse than Joe Paterno did. First of all, stop calling your father Joe Paterno. He's your father, you idiot. When we get back from break, we're going to talk about some of his quotes. We'll get to some more of your calls at 855-HEY-COACH. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Hey Coach Tony every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. on 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio. I want to remind you that the light at the end of the tunnel is getting closer. Our deal with CPTV is being finalized, and so you'll have some Hey Coach Tony goodness on your TV screen before you know it. Before we went to break, we started talking about I guess let's just talk what everyone's talking about, the Penn State scandal, and started blowing my top a little bit, but we had some good thoughts from Charlie and from Kirk. I want to talk about something a little bit less emotional before I get into all the stupid stuff that Jay Paterno has been talking about. And so when I need even-keeled, monotone vanilla, I go to Adam. Adam, question for you.
What do you got?
All right, what do you really think should happen to the Penn State football program? Forget about Paterno, he's dead. Forget about Sandusky, for all intents and purposes, he's dead. What should happen to Penn State football?
I don't know. I mean, at this point, it's kind of, I would say they got to at least, I don't know, maybe suspend it for the season or something like that, just to, like, let the dust settle, and, after this atomic bomb just went off, you know what I mean?
Well, there's certainly been an atomic bomb, no question about it.
I don't see how they can play a season. I really don't.
And there are people calling for the death penalty,
right?
And I don't mean for Sandusky. I mean the death penalty. For those of you who don't know, it means basically, for X period of time, your program is shot. You do not have one. Maybe I'll surprise you here because I don't buy into that. I don't even buy into the notion of suspensions. And I thought long and hard about this. And if you have an opinion on it, give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. But here's what I'm thinking. When a football program violates football rules and cheats with regard to recruiting football players and giving away illegal football scholarships, that's when I think the football program needs to be punished. And by the way, punished severely. This one is just so unique because this has nothing to do with football. The only role football played in this whole debacle was football was simply a tool by which Jerry Sandusky lured young boys into the shower, into his home, so he could rape them. So again, not a hot enough place in hell for Jerry Sandusky.
I think that's what people don't understand is that this isn't a football scandal. It has nothing to do with the program. It has to do with this monster who, lured little boys into the shower.
Absolutely right. And I made a bold prediction when we first did the Penn State story, and I said now that Paterno's fired, he'll be dead. I think I gave him 3 months, and I think I was pretty accurate. I don't remember exactly what I said.
Right.
Here's my next prediction. Somebody's going to forget to take the shoelaces out of Sandusky's shoes, and he's going to hang himself. That guy is going to off himself in prison. Yeah. And you know what? My first thought was I hope so, but I don't. I think it would be a crime against humanity if Sandusky was allowed to take his own life. Why? Because I think he needs a little shower time. I think that guy needs to spend, the 14 years things were covered up. He needs at least 14 years of what I'll call a little prison payback. And I'm not going to say anything more than that because unless you're an idiot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But death is too good for Jerry Sandusky. As a parent, I am absolutely floored. You know what? And this is where I sound like an idiot. I am less floored by the rape than by the cover-up. So I understand why people say Joe Paterno is more guilty than Jerry Sandusky. Again, he's not. But, man, Joe Paterno had time to think about what he could and should do. And just made a conscious decision to let young boys suffer. And I don't just mean suffer the physical damage of a rape. I'm talking about the psychological scars that these men, because they're men now, are going to carry around with them for the rest of their lives. So if there is a duplex condo in hell, Sandusky and Paterno just signed the lease, and that's what I'm hoping does happen. But if you're one of those guys that says death penalty or I hope he kills himself, don't let this idiot off that easy. 855-HEY-COACH is the number here in the studio. Now, before we move on to some more of your calls and emails, there were a couple of generalities that came in during the week with regard to this. And while Charlie from Jersey City had suggested that perhaps the statue stay up, one of the things that I'd gotten some emails on is, keep the statue up. It's a symbol of the fallibility of all of us as men. And by the way, women are no better. But yeah, fallibility of us as men, I can get that. One person went so far as to say, let's keep the statue up and let's do kind of like a 9/11 memorial. Let's have a little room where all the information is going to be made available to anybody who wants to see it. And people were saying, wow, what a great idea. What a great idea. What a stupid idea. And let me explain to you why that's a dumb, dumb idea. First of all, like I said, every time that statue of Paterno is flashed on the screen, there's not a person walking the earth, with the exception of Franco Mongo Harris, who is thinking, wow, great football coach, what a great man, he shaped lives, he built a program. Everyone's thinking the same thing. How could you let those things happen to those children? And now some idiot wants to erect, I won't call it a monument, let's call it a library, let's call it whatever it is, let's call it a phone booth. You want a room that has all the information about this available to the public. Wow, what a great way to simply amplify the humiliation of at least 10 young boys who were raped.
And didn't the school want to take care of the publicity and not make it bad?
Well,
so then why would you make something public like that? That's a terrible idea.
Well, that didn't come from the school. That came from an idiot Penn State. It's one of those bra-burning Penn State students who has nothing, they have nothing better. Let's figure out what to protest. I tell you, oh boy, the people that were protesting against this and still are trying to defend Joe Paterno, you're making me sick. Not because, listen, you got some feelings in your heart for Joe Paterno like Jimmy Kennedy and a lot of the alumni do. I don't fault you for that, guys. I really don't. But now that all the information is out on the table, do yourself a favor. Shut up. Go into hiding. Keep your feelings for this guy to yourself. And as we said before the break, you know who should be keeping these feelings to himself more than anybody? Sonny Boy, Jay Paterno. This guy has shown a level of arrogance and defiance this week in the media like no one ever has since like O.J. Simpson. This is the kind of defiance that we're dealing with. There should be a book written about all the stupid comments he's made this week alone. But one that jumped off the page at me as I was reading on throughout the media. Paterno, obviously the family wants the statue to stand. And I got to tell you, I just don't get that. Because all it's going to do is draw negative attention to your family. But he keeps saying the same thing over and over and over again. And the statement he makes is, in one way, shape, or form or another, is Joe Paterno was charged with nothing. And while that is very factual, Adam, do you know why Joe Paterno wasn't charged with anything?
Because he didn't rape the young boys?
Well, close. Josh, you know why Joe Paterno wasn't charged with anything?
Because he's dead.
He's dead! The guy is
Right.
dead, so he can't charge him. If there was a rule where you could dig up his dead body and drag his corpse to a courtroom, I would be the first one with a shovel trying to do it. But he can't be charged because he is dead. Idiots! I mean, what kind of a stupid statement is that? And he keeps just alluding to things like, oh, this report isn't a legal document. It's just opinions and new information based on stuff we already knew. So what? This new information is basically just painting a much darker picture of your dad. Your dad who could have saved suffering and anguish for even one of those kids. Just one of them. If you were victim number 10 of the 10 counts, the 10 victims that Sandusky was proven to have raped, if you were number 10 and Joe Paterno speaking up would have saved you the physical assault and the mental anguish, boy, you'd be waving the Joe Paterno flag, wouldn't you? Absolutely would. All right, listen, when we get back from break, I'm gonna go to an early break. We're gonna get to some of the points in the actual report and some opinions about this. And I am hoping that before we get through that I can talk about some of these judgment-based sports, because with the Olympics coming up, this thing sticks in my craw. Matter of fact, we'll wrap it up after the break, and then we're going to start talking about some of these judgment-based sports. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. Stick around. I'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're with Tony Fiorino this and every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on 940 and 1510 ESPN Radio. Heard live online pretty much everywhere now. YouTube, iHigh.com, and soon coming to CP TV Sports throughout the state of Connecticut on broadcast and cable TV. All right, listen, if you guys want to talk some more Penn State stuff, I'll take your calls. 855-HEY-COACH. But I got to tell you, I'm either going to blow a gasket or I got to move on to something else. And I think I'm going to move on to something else. This week, I want to get some opinions on something that has bothered me forever. I grew up playing mostly what I would call traditional sports, baseball, football, basketball, that kind of stuff. Sports that were governed by a clock and or a scoreboard. When the game was over, everybody knew who won. It was simple. So simple, in fact, that I never really gave it much of a second thought. I mean, sure, there was always some controversy over a call or two, but for the most part, the overall game and the rules of the game were self-policing. All right? We can all agree on that. Now, with the Olympic Games fast approaching, I am reminded of a time when I was introduced to a new type of sport. The sport itself wasn't new, but the methodology behind winning and losing was sure new to me. My daughter Sophia was, at a younger age, a pretty decent little gymnast, and at a pretty young age. And if you're a gymnastics parent, you can feel my pain. I would drive, or in some cases fly, hours at a time to these gymnastics meets, and I would watch, 100, 200 girls do seemingly the same exact thing, the same exact way. Yet I was befuddled when it came time to see the scores. What I never understood is what made one girl get a 9.5 on beam while my daughter did the same exact thing and got a 7.5. The competitive athlete in me just couldn't let it go. And you know what? Still can't. My question for all of you this week is this. How can a sport be considered true competition when some third party is deciding, for lack of a better term, who wins and who loses? 855-HEY-COACH is the number in the studio, and I want to know what you guys think about it. We've, like I said, we've got our buddy Josh back here. Adam is back here. I mean, what do you guys think about this? And I know gymnastics isn't the only sport, but what do you think about these sports where someone basically decides who wins or loses?
I hate it. I mean, all you have to do is look back, a few weeks ago with the Manny Pacquiao fight, and just look at that disgrace and that ruling. I mean, it's just like so. I mean, I don't know if you saw that fight. I'm sure you heard about it, obviously. And it's just like, I mean, come on, how can anyone, come to the decision that they did? Where it was like, it was just a joke.
You can almost favor someone over someone else by, like you could attribute like looks into it, how they do this, and I just think I prefer the old, score by the tally way to make it work, like with the traditional sports, like you said, Tony.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
Nobody decides if a basket goes in or not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And especially with the Olympics, wasn't there a thing a few Olympics back with like the French judge and all that stuff? And it's just like,
yeah,
there's so much like, other factors that go into like why someone might choose someone based on maybe like nationality and stuff like that, and that just, I don't know, opens up a whole can of worms.
Yeah, would you want the Irish judge putting in a final score for Great Britain on gymnastics? Probably not. And you guys happen to hit the two, what I would call, Adam, kudos to you, guy. I got to tell you. Josh is the one who hit the Pacquiao fight, right? Or was that?
No, that was
me.
So Adam, you got both of them?
Yeah, I got both of them.
All right, Josh. I don't know what you're doing to earn your keep around here, but dude, you just got to step it up. All right. But yeah, you brought up what I would call the two most obvious, and one of them being the most recent cases. By the way, I do know, if for those of you who are listening, there are other sports that fall into this category. I don't know if you guys can name any of the others, but clearly we hit figure skating, gymnastics, and boxing. Tell you what, anybody who can stretch their brain this morning and give us a couple of additional sports where this holds true, you get a mug or a T-shirt. So give us a call at 855-HEY-COACH. It's 855-439-2622. Yeah, this. I tell you what. Yeah, I will get to some of your calls because I know on line one is from the Chicago Now blog, Kirk Mango, who is calling in. And Kirk, I just realized Kirk was a competitive gymnast, and I believe coached it for a number of years as well. So aside from writing a heck of a book that is being released right now, Kirk is joining us from Chicago. Hey, Kirk, you're on Hey Coach Tony. What's going on, buddy?
How you doing, Coach? What's up?
I hope Adam and Josh didn't tick you off too much this morning, but obviously, I'm sure you have some opinions as to the subtleties about the layman of us who just see it as someone thinks that a blue leotard looks better than a red leotard, so you get a 9.5. I'm sure that's not the extent of it. So I'm assuming you're going to shed some light on us and give us an opinion about this.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of subjectivity in a sport like gymnastics as there is in figure skating. I mean, that is the nature of the sport. However, from the inside, there is specific criteria that judges need to follow when they give these scores, and people on the outside looking in sometimes aren't able to see the subtleties that they do pick up on. So, I mean, it is subjective to an extent. It's not like crossing a finish line, but there are some specific things that need to be taken into account as one judges a routine. I know when I watch Olympics or high school athletes or gymnastics at any level, I pretty much have a good idea what the score is going to end up before it even is flashed. Now, there are instances where they are so close that it does become a judgment, but, you know, you can look at just about any sport and find the same type of subjectivity that you see in that piece in those sports as well.
Well, question for you, Kirk, because here's the question I've got. I know there are certain criteria, thresholds, et cetera, that must be met, and those are not subjective. If you have to do X amount of moves, or if it's a triple instead of a double, or with a half, and I know there are pieces to it that are completely objective, but within some of these guidelines, outside of the you must do these moves, isn't there still, even with the milestones and thresholds they have to hit, isn't there still a level of subjectivity even within that criteria?
Yes, and that does cause frustration not only for coaches but for athletes. I mean, I've experienced some of that as an athlete competing. So, yes, and it is a frustrating thing to deal with, but I might also add that even though it's at a little higher level, how much different is it than the size of a strike zone that an umpire uses in baseball, or whether a referee calls a foul or not, or whether a wrestler is called for a near pin or not, or a takedown. You know, some people on the outside would say that's clearly a near pin in wrestling, and others might say it is not. Well, at some point, that referee must make a judgment. The recent Pacquiao-Mosley match is a perfect example of subjectivity. I mean, anyone that sat and watched that boxing match would likely have voted for Pacquiao as winning that fight, but that's not how the judges saw it, and that's in a sport like boxing.
Well, and that yes, that's one of the sports where there has been. And here's the funny thing: people. Let's talk about the Pacquiao fight. But actually, you know what? Remind me to mention what I think about the Pacquiao fight. But I want to get to the strike zone thing because I've heard this one all week long, and it's a good point. Because any sport or game where you have a referee, there are going to be judgment calls. We know that. And by the way, I don't think there's any way to ever solve this. Matter of fact, I know there's not. But here's where, as a gymnastics dad, I would go bonkers, or as a figure skating dad, I'd go bonkers, or as a boxing coach, I'd go bonkers. Let's use the strike zone as the example. A strike zone, or any one given call on a ball or a strike in a game, with the exception of something that happens with bases loaded in the ninth inning, let's say, is simply one factor in the contest. When it comes to things like gymnastics or boxing or figure skating, the decision is basically made, here's your overall performance. And so a judge making a mistake loses or wins the match or the competition for the athlete, whereas, listen, as a baseball player, no one's ever happy with balls and strikes, but you know what? It's just part of an at-bat, and that at-bat is just part of an inning, and that inning is just part of a game. Imagine, and here's the best example I'll give you. Imagine if an umpire had to sit through an entire 9-inning baseball game and then just decide at the end who won. That would be a pretty challenging thing to do. In the case of the strike zone, yes, there is clearly subjectivity to it. There are clearly guys who botch it. There, the guy who blew I forget the Detroit Tigers pitcher who had his no-hitter taken away.
Armando
Galarraga from an obviously blown call. They cannot change it. So with the exception of something like that, which, by the way, didn't even affect the outcome of the game. It just affected, baseball history. But in these subjective judged sports, the judge decides basically who wins. Where in these other sports, there are factors of which during the course of any baseball, basketball, football, hockey game, there are probably 30 of these incidents that have some impact on the game. It's still not a case where Tony Fiorino as the umpire decides who wins. And that's really where the difference is. And Kurt, like I said, I don't think we're ever going to solve it. Unless boxing moves to whoever gets knocked the hell out loses, then there's no way to ever solve that, and clearly not in figure skating or gymnastics.
Well, and you make a good point, and that's what I was referring to when I said it's not at the same level. However, you do have to keep in mind that it's not just one person making the decision, especially at the elite level. Whether you're talking, college, the national level, or at the Olympic level, you've got more than one judge, all viewing a routine from different perspectives. And those judges, and I think it's the same in figure skating, have to come up with a score that's within a range. I'll throw out one example. As a gymnast, when they land, one thing that they are trying to do is stick whatever move that they're doing. It might be a dismount on the still rings. A judge could see a small hop as a 10th deduction, where another judge might say that's a stick. So that's similar, so to speak, to the strike zone, in that that's one movement, and that can happen at various places within a routine. But you are right. I mean, the subjectivity is at a different level. Diving would be another example, synchronized swimming, anything like that, where someone has to use some criteria and come up with a score. But there are more than one judge, and they must be within a range, which does narrow it a little bit, but of course, you're never going to get rid of it. And I don't care what sport you're in, there is some level of subjectivity in just about any sport that I can think of. Track would be the one that comes closest to not having that.
Yeah, and there's still subjectivity. And by the way, you came up with synchronized swimming. So if I haven't already given you a mug or a T-shirt, one's on its way. So email me your address, and I will obviously send that to you. And by the way, if you have any other sports that we're missing, guys, just chime right in. Kirk, before I let you go, you know what? Plug your book. What's the name of your book, and tell people how they can get it.
Becoming a True Champion, Achieving Athletic Excellence from the Inside Out. You can get it at any of the booksellers. Some of the Barnes & Noble and Andersons out here have it in stock. Many of them you can order it, but probably for ease, you can get it at Amazon or Barnes & Noble online. And my blog is at becomingatruechampion.com, and I have links to buying the book there as well.
All right, Becoming a True Champion, authored by Kirk Mango out of Chicago. Great friend of the show. Great call as always, Kirk. Thanks for coming in, babe. All right, so
Great
listen,
talking.
You got it. So when we get back from break, we're going to challenge you guys. As a matter of fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw it out. I'll let you guys, if you Google this, you knuckleheads, I'm going to kill you. But I want to get some other sports where judgment comes into play, and we'll talk more about I guess the merits of having someone else decide whether or not your kid wins or loses. You're listening to Hey Coach Tony. We'll be right back.
Coach Tony.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Tony Fiorino every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. for Hey Coach Tony on ESPN Radio. I want to say thanks again to Kirk Mango for calling in and give us some insights as to, I guess, some of the methodologies behind, I shouldn't say eliminating, but clearly reducing some of the subjectivity in these judgment sports. Because I got to tell you, one of the problems that we've got, and there's no question about it, is, I guess here's the real reason I take issue with sports that are judged. Whenever you leave decisions in human hands, decisions are going to get botched. Period. I mean, anyone else can think of some major judging snafus that have occurred in recent sports history besides the Pacquiao thing and the French judge who tried to hose the Canadians during the 2002 Olympics, I believe it was. Give us a call at 855 Hey Coach. By the way, during the break, our trusty intern Josh reminded me that, this is just to make a point on the Paterno thing, Nike has a children's development center by their headquarters, and I believe it's in Beaverton, Oregon, or something like that. It was called the Joe Paterno Children's Center, and Nike stepped up, didn't make a blasted fanfare about it, but they have taken Joe Paterno's name off of the Children's Center. Between you and me, I don't see how they couldn't. If it was the Joe Paterno, football helmet manufacturing facility, then, maybe you could keep it. But Children's Center, sorry, Joe, you blew that one when you decided to let the devil live amongst your ranks at the campus. So anyway, we're going to get back to these judgment-based sports. and I didn't mean to hesitate when I said sports, but I got an email in here from, and I always like to get to our buddy Bob Hirschfield. Bob is busy as a beaver because the New York Baseball Academy has actually gone into full swing, but he took enough time during the week to shoot me a quick note. And he wrote in and said, "Hey, Coach Tony, sports like you're dealing with in today's show are just so subjective. However, judges are all trying to put some objectivity into an historically subjective evaluation. My daughter Kate was a competitive skater at a young age, and she used to train with Sarah and Emily Hughes early in the morning for a few years. These 4 a.m. wake-ups were tough on Rita, but not on her. She used to walk around at 4:15 with those skates on ready to go." Well, Hirsch, thanks as always. And I can just imagine Rita, who most of us know as Mrs. Hirsch, getting up at 4 a.m. while your lazy butt was still snoozing away. But Hirsch actually brings up a great point, and I'm not sure I was clear enough about it. Even though there have been cases of cheating, and let's call the Pacquiao fight cheating. Let's call the French judge cheating. There have been plenty of cases of actual cheating in the scoring process, and we're going to talk about that in a second. This is really about an inherent flaw in the scoring system. And yes, Hirsch, I'm sure they're trying to bring objectivity, and Kirk said it as well. They're trying to bring objectivity to a completely subjective process. But that's really the problem, as I see it. You know, it's tough enough to train your whole life for something and watch it slip away from you when you actually lose fair and square. Now think about how that's got to feel if you train your whole life and it slips away from you because some third party, some judge, simply decides that the other person is better. Like I said, I don't even know if there's an answer to this one, but I just can't get myself past this. Adam, Josh, am I crazy, or is this just nothing more than good debate fodder?
No, I think you're right on point. I mean, you know.
Josh, you haven't chimed in on much of the figure skating stuff or the gymnastics stuff. By the way, do either of you guys have any additional sports that fall into this category?
Half-pipe snowboarding, the Winter Olympics.
I was gonna say,
if you consider that a sport, I mean.
Yeah. I was gonna say mine. I was like, I don't know how you feel about this one, but I was gonna say skateboarding.
The X Games. The
X Games. I was watching that.
X Games in general are strictly based on how cool is that move. Well, I think it's cool and you don't, and
Yep.
Well, I was going to say, like you're talking about with judging based on, other things other than performance. You could look at, let's say you have two athletes, for argument's sake, let's say they're snowboarders, and you have Shaun White versus someone you never heard of before, right? Mm-hmm. And the guy that you never heard of before to you looks like, he had a better performance. His moves were more, I guess, gnarly, for lack of a better term. But the judges give it to White instead because he's more popular, because they know who he is, because that's what the fans want.
The Michael Jordan treatment.
Well, absolutely, and I wouldn't think for a second that does not happen. In fact, there was an email we got from Diane in North Carolina who wrote in this week and said, "Hey, Coach Tony, this isn't as clear as you guys might think. I just thought of it because I used to coach and judge, and it ain't easy. Also, I totally think judges are influenced by other judges. And if they say they aren't, they're lying. Maybe not at the higher, more elite levels, but definitely in youth sports in general. So, heck, maybe it does happen at the higher levels, too. Something to think about. And that, again, the inherent flaws in these scoring processes are somewhat related to just human nature. You guys mentioned it. Shaun White is competing against anybody, and it's close. Shaun White's going to win. Exactly. That's just what it is. And there's clearly, I think Diane brings up a very good point as well, because at some of these gymnastics competitions where I would go, there are at least two judges, and they confer. Kirk alluded to the fact that there are several judges, and if they're not within a certain range, the judges have to discuss it. And whenever judges are discussing things, first of all, what do we know about these snooty, stuck-up elite judges in things like gymnastics and figure skating? They got egos the size of a room. So guess what? Adam gives somebody a 4.5, and I give somebody a 9.5. If we're going to confer, that's a nice way to say we're going to argue about which of us is right. And the person with the better negotiating skills is going to win. And that's just a fact. I mean, how else are you going to what other results going to come from conferring? a conference among, French, Russian, British, Polish, Italian judges. First of all, let's get the interpreters there. Let's wear those earpieces like the UN. How are you really going to get some consensus there? Okay. It's an inherent flaw. Clearly just an inherent flaw in the process. So, Diane, not a bad point or two. Like I said, this is really about youth sports. And like I said, I would watch and I would wonder when these judges were conferring, what are you talking about? The gymnastics scores at the 8 and 9-year-old level go to the 100th of a point. Are you really going to tell me that 2 part-time judges are going to figure something out to within 100th of a point so that some girl's going to get a pink ribbon instead of a blue one? Come on. Give me a break. All right, we got a couple of minutes left here.
Dancing with the Stars operates the same way.
You're an idiot.
I'm just saying. Not that I watch it.
Oh my God! You. Then how do you know it operates that way? What do you read? You read Dance with the Stars weekly?
Because my grandma loves Dancing with the Stars.
Your grandma. Is grandma listening?
Maybe she might be.
Oh
actually.
boy, you better. Good answer, because I was about to shred you and grandma in the same sentence, and then I have to go. Then I got to worry about calls from intern Josh's family for next week. But yeah, I think, listen, one of the most ridiculous examples of this was when in the 2002 Winter Olympics, the figure skating pairs competition. If anyone remembers, the team from Russia had won the short program over Canada. In the free skate, the Russians made a small error while the Canadians skated what was considered a flawless but a less difficult routine. Previously in their short program, those Canadians tripped and fell on their closing pose, but because the fall was not on an element, they didn't get a deduction. But perception's everything, so the Canadians were in second place behind Russia. Now, in figure skating, final standings are made up of both the short and the long program, so the Canadians had to perform substantially better than the Russians in the long program if they were going to win the gold. That's the preface here. For the long program, Canada received 3 5.9s for technical merit, while the Russians received mostly 5.8s and 5.7s. However, for presentation, which is the most objective thing in figure skating, Canadians got 4 5.9s. The Russians got 7 of them. Now, back in 2002, for some reason, presentation was weighed more heavily than technical merit. The Canadians needed to get 5 5.9s to overtake Russia for first. There was obvious disagreement from the crowd, but this margin held until the end, and that gave the gold medal to the Russians. The Canadians, if you remember, they accepted their silver medal with grace, but with some obvious disappointment. Public reaction to the results, especially in North America, where Canada is, it was pretty serious. And so there was immediate suspicion of cheating. Now, I don't know why, but suspicion fell almost immediately on that French judge. Well, I guess I do know why. Nobody trusts French people. Anyway, French judge went back to the official's hotel. She was immediately confronted by the chairman of the International Skating Union's technical committee. Under questioning, she had an emotional breakdown. She folded like a mob rat.
Wow.
She allegedly said she had been pressured by the head of the French skating organization to vote for the Russian pair, regardless of how others performed. Now, you would think French, Canadian, you think they'd be together on this? Apparently not. She allegedly repeated her admission of guilt at the post-event judges meeting the next day. And it was alleged, and here's where you get why this happened, this was part of a deal to get an advantage for the French couple in the ice dance competition that was going to follow just a few days later. However, guess what? Later, in a signed statement, the French judge did a flip-flop. And in a signed statement, she denied taking part in any such deal and also stated that she truly believed the Russian pair deserved to win. Why do I tell the story? Well, to show that all of this is meaningless. Whenever you got third parties deciding who wins and who loses, no matter how objective we like to think people are, there are just too many moving parts to ever truly make it fair. Agree, disagree, let me know on the Facebook page, because we are out of time one more time. Hey, as always, I appreciate the calls and the emails. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of the weekend. We'll see you next week.